Thank you so much, Roger, and also Penny, and for the Australian Sociological Association as well for hosting our skate talk on Taza Thursdays. So this afternoon's talk is about skating, architecture and public space, and sociology, bringing in interdisciplinary conversations, which are part of the aim of the Skate, Create, Educate and Regenerate project at the University of Sydney. The University of Sydney, we also acknowledge country and First Nations people, and we're based on the land of the Gadigal people and the Darug peoples. Would also like to draw attention to the wonderful work of Nick Hayes, who is the founder of the very first Indigenous-run skateboarding company, Spinifex Skateboards, who we're very fortunate to have speak at the Skate, Create, Educate and Regenerate event last year, with Auntie Ding, Joy Murphy-Wanden, or Roger leader, also doing the Welcome to Country and having the Spinifex team present as well, including Greg Barnes. So the Skate, Create, Educate and Regenerate project has a number of community and professional networks, and also just through my individual scholarship as well. And we draw on these to bring in conversations around skateboarding, the environment, architecture, health, and various sociological interests and social sciences. We've also have connections now with the art world through Art Play Risk, and some of the talks tonight will be a combination of people who are graduating in architecture. They come from a variety of backgrounds in public art and fine art and so on. Recently, I was able to go overseas with a Winston Churchill Fellowship and just look at a comparative study of what's going on in Australia and overseas. And it's pretty clear skateboarding can be embraced by all ages, stages, bodies and backgrounds. And in this image here, it's a coaching program run for queer skateboarders on one side, and on the other, it's a London Skate Mums group. So really taking in various demographics who are embracing skateboarding. Similar with my work in Consent is Red and Respect is Red, with Evie Ryder and Millie Meldjevect and others, Brooke Manning and so on. We can see that from Brisbane all the way to Venice Beach, there's great diversity in skateboarding and various ways that people use the built environment for play and having joy together, and ranging from very beginners to high performance. So in Skateboarding We Skate Queensland, we've actually been able to see that evolvement from skateboarding as a subculture to also being an Olympic sport. On the right, we have various skateboarders from the subculture, some of them now high performance coaches in Skate Australia, training the next generation of Olympians. And of course, in Queensland, we have Arissa True, who is the youngest gold medalist in Australia, not just in skating, but in all sport, to win a gold medal. I think she's 14 and 15 now. She has an OIM, and she won gold in the Olympics in Paris, and she has done very well in X Games similarly and broken many world records. But skateboarding is more than just the high performance side. It is part of the subculture, and there are many people also using it as a tool for social good and to address various social issues. And this includes anti-racism. So the Melanin Gals and Pals in the image to the right, Dr. Mayesi is doing wonderful work there, to addressing the needs and making space safer as well, such as Lucy Adams, who's a high performance coach with Skateboarding GB and a professional skateboarder. We've always, though, however, prioritised that you can have fun with peers, even if you are on an Olympic pathway. So with We Skate Queensland here, there's some young girls having fun, but they're also, some of them are high performance athletes, such as Hayley Servo, who represented Finland in the Paris Games. We've had Hayley Powell and also Chloe Cavell in our competitions. Skate side-by-side girls just having fun. And of course, Abby Rose is also on that way to being with the Queensland Academy of Sport. And more recently, I've been able to go to Southeast Asia and look at how skateboarding is developing there. Tonight's talk, however, is really looking at skateboarding on the streets. It's very interested in skate urbanism, a concept that Leo Valls has embraced and used to convince the city of Bordeaux to decriminalize skateboarding and embrace it and have an annual festival, which is on this year, and brings together researchers, experts and key players around the world to discuss how skateboarding can be integrated into the built environment in artworks, in streetscapes, and away from the skate park. So it's not against skate parks, but it's also saying that cities can be built to allow for play in various ways. Skateistan will be there doing something as well, talking about skateboarding in under-recognized places, from war-affected to stigmatized urban spaces, which is also very much a part of the work that we can all embrace and move forward. And that's some of the panelists that will be there who work with refugees and people of color and queer skateboarders. Last year, at University of Sydney, we also had a 2-day symposium about skateboarding, public art, and creative sports with Art Play Risk, who's my co-host with the Skate, Create, Educate, and Regenerate project. And we also had a panel with the Festival of Urbanism, which brought together Olympian Poppy Star with architect William Chan, SpinFX founder Nikki Hayes, WCMX professional wheelchair skateboarder Timothy Lachlan, and public artist Sana Mestrom. But tonight we're very, very fortunate to have some of the speakers from that symposium last year present their research now, and with some updates and reflections from people like Alicia Mardonis, who was also part of the proceedings last year. So the speakers tonight are Dr. Dan Johnston, Anastasija Kukić, and Gav Drumm. And future talks will be from Melissa Mardonis and Aaron Christensen as well, who are present, but will do their presentation sometime in the future. So let's stay in touch. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
So my name is Dan Johnston. I'm a design lecturer from Western Sydney University, and I'm currently on a on research leave, working on a skate parks in Western Sydney project, which is an evolution of my PhD work, which I'm presenting here tonight. So Indy, can you just go up one slide? Thanks. So tonight I'm on Wiradjuri, Darug and Gundungurra land over the back of the Blue Mountains near Lithgow. So I'd like to acknowledge that teaching and learning has been happening in this space for thousands of years. So skate parks are undeniably youth-orientated spaces, and it's fair to say that these spaces carry the expectation that the primary role is for skateboarding or other wheel-based activities. Indy? But upon close inspection, there are lots of signs and traces that reveal that lots of other activities happen at skate parks. So whether they're meeting up or hanging out or hooking up or dropping out, whether they're creating or defacing or worshipping, just to name a few. So during my Doctor of Creative Arts, I visited over 140 skate parks, mostly in Australia, some overseas, and through photography, I documented thousands of visible traces that revealed the ways that skate parks were used for activities beyond what they were designed for, which is primarily skateboarding. So as a result, I not only developed a practice-led structure for my doctoral thesis, which was really useful for me because, you know, I'm not the most natural academic, but I also created a visual archive that systematically demonstrated the deep connection that skaters have with the spaces that they occupy, namely skate parks, as well as the rich culture that's often overlooked within these spaces as far as planning and development goes for new skate parks in Australia. So when I first embarked on my doctorate, I was actually on the steering committee for a new skate park that was being developed in the Blue Mountains. And I was actually shocked at the time by the amount of opposition that we were facing from the. So one went so far as to threaten to shoot any contractor that turned up on site to turn the first sod. So, Indy, you want to go to the next slide? So my naive brain at the time thought that if I could present opportunities for the haters of skateboarding to have positive interactions with skateboarders and skate parks, then that may soften their attitudes. So I produced a suite of work that was exhibited in the Blue Mountains Cultural Centre as a solo exhibition, which was launched by the Lord Mayor, so it had really good support. Next slide. And when I attracted an audience for the exhibition, my supervisors seemed happy that my job was done and it was an acceptable proof of concept, and they encouraged me to write up my thesis and complete my doctorate. Although at the time I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that I'd only really scratched the surface of the potential of the study. and that there was a lot more to my photographs than, you know, the pure aesthetics, which was what I was presenting at the exhibition, than I had given credit to. So after a while, I ditched the aesthetics and I became more focused on the user-added features that made skateboarding more culture and less sport. And I became quite obsessed about how these traces of use created a narrative that I had yet to really appreciate, let alone explore, let alone present to the broader community. Indy. So one day, whilst trawling through my images, trying to find a doctoral degree in the collection, I had an epiphany when I was looking at this very image that you can see on screen. I was staring at the photograph. This is from a skate park called Bishan Road in Singapore. Next slide. So what we can see here is Rest in Peace Memorial, written probably in marker fluid on the side of a ramp. Now, my initial thoughts were about how brave the people were who left these marks, considering the punitive laws that face people who practice graffiti in Singapore. And, you know, the fact that it was a dedication to someone who had passed away. Next slide. So it was the rediscovery of these epitaphs in Singapore that was a real turning point in my research. So when I say rediscovery, I had been photographing them all along, and I you know, it didn't take long for me to go into my database and pull out all the examples of memorials that I collected during my initial photographic work. I hadn't really appreciated the frequency, though, or the subtle ways that they changed between towns, states, and countries. So this thinking marked the turning point where my focus shifted from the physical features of skate parks, such as the geographic location and the ways that skate parks were built, to seeking out recurring traces and cataloguing them. So I suddenly had a framework for seeking out other marks that gave evidence to the different ways that skate parks were used, so all uses that they weren't necessarily designed for. Next slide. So with the large number and variety of traces that I began accumulating, along with thousands of images, things soon started getting quite overwhelming. I was struggling with the bulk of material, not quite knowing how to manage it, and wasn't able to focus on the important data that was you know, being born from the collection. I had a conversation with a social science researcher, and they suggested that I should try coding my images, which was a new concept to me. So not only was this process, you know, promising to establish a sense of order, but it will also present correlations between different codes, as well as locations and also frequencies. Indy? So after a few weeks of trial and error, I happened upon an application called Atlas TI, which allowed me to apply themes and codes to relevant photographs. Slide. So for example, within Atlas, if I happened upon a piece of RIP graffiti, which we can see here, this is photographed in Taree in northern New South Wales. So RIP was one of my codes. I was able to marquee the section of the photograph that contains the trace, then link the marquee to the code, which then categorizes it along with all the other instances of that trace that I've come across. Next slide. So most importantly, rather than reading the traces simply as graffiti, which is how the general public tends to see these marks, I was appreciating the subtleties of communication, the transaction of ideas, the affiliations of local customs, and most importantly, the rich culture that exists within skateboarding. Next slide. So through the 140 site surveys, I documented 71 unique codes that were recorded across 1,400 images. Next slide. Now, I said before, I'm not the most comfortable academic, and I'm certainly not a natural writer. So I was incredibly relieved when this approach provided me with a structure for attacking my thesis. And I made a rule that for each code, I was going to, spend some time writing about it, even if it was only a single page. For example, here we can see one of my thesis spreads, which speaks about traces referring to drugs, and subsequently the way that the media, and therefore the general public, often associate drugs with skateboarding. So just on the side, these screenshots were from I think Today Tonight or a TV show similar, where they were talking about the dangers of inhaling nitrous oxide. And even though the news article had nothing to do with skateboarding, they chose to shoot the spot in a skate park, which I think is, fairly common. So I passed my doctorate in 2020, which gave me a huge amount of satisfaction, as you can imagine. But my research stagnated somewhat during COVID. So I was relieved to have a revival in 2023 when I was invited to the Stoke sessions in San Diego. And straight off the back of that, can you change the slide? And straight off the back of that, the Legislative Assembly Committee for the Australian Capital Territory invited me to give evidence into an inquiry into skateboarding and skate parks in the ACT. So this was an affirming moment for me, as it was the first time since completing my doctorate, next slide, that I could fully appreciate the impact and potential reach of my research. So whilst this slide may seem like self-aggrandizing, as an early career researcher, such as myself, working in a niche study area of skateboarding, seeing these citations has been quite a career highlight. Next slide. So the Legislative Assembly report, which was published last year, made 33 recommendations for current and future developments. If you can just flick through the next couple of slides. So these are some examples of the recommendations that came off the back of my research. So right now, I'm on study leave, and I'm working on a development of my doctoral research. So the current project is called Skate Parks in Western Sydney. You go to the next slide, Indy. So, and the next. So the study is a systematic review of all skate parks in Western Sydney local government areas. I felt that one of the issues with my original research is that I took quite an ad hoc approach to how I chose the skate parks that I did site surveys at, and I had one of those classic moments where I thought if I could start again, what I would do is set a really clear boundary with some clear constraints. So that's exactly what I'm doing this time. So working entirely within the Western Sydney LGAs, these are the skate parks that I'm studying in a similar way. But basically the study is aimed at creating a snapshot of how well these skate parks serve the communities that they're situated in. So I'm going to be interrogating the systems that influence the approaches and processes that local governments utilise when considering young people in the community. And the study undertakes to understand why and how some skate parks work and some don't work so well, and hopefully provide a framework that can be utilised across a range of future initiatives, not just with skateboarding, but other youth leisure spaces or public spaces, both in Australia and overseas, all through the lens of creating healthy communities. Next slide, Judy. So like my trace survey, I'll be taking systematic measurements at each site to discover whether there are any correlations between skatepark locations, facilities, services, usage, but this time recording features such as location, construction type, style, age, access to facilities such as toilets and water, access to shops, distance from schools, public transport. Next slide. So taking location as an example, there is a propensity in Australia to place skate parks in green spaces on the edges of playing fields and in areas dedicated to football and cricket. So this approach makes perfect sense when we think of skateboarding as a sport. But how do these locations take on the culture of skateboarding into account? How well do these locations serve the young people who spend hours at a time in these spaces, often treating the spaces as sanctuary, safer than their own homes? So going to the skate park cannot and shouldn't be compared to going for a game of footy, where kids turn up, follow the rules, have a game, then go home. But planners and decision makers who develop these sites often do so through a real fixed sporting mindset. So the rest in peace dedications frequently found at skate parks as proof that our relationships with skate parks is a lot more complex than function alone. Next slide, Indy. So for example, in the surf town of Ulladulla on the south coast of New South Wales, it's a prime example of how skate park location may affect how the space is used. Next slide. So here we can see the main shopping precinct. Next slide. Here's the primary school, which would surely represent a large catchment of users. The next slide. And the local high school. And the next slide. And then the actual skate park is located outside of town, away from community and services. Even the sewage treatment plant is closer to town. So, you know, I think these location comparisons may contribute to a better understanding of whether skate park users are being subconsciously designed out of the community, which affects the sense of inclusion that skate park users sometimes feel. Next slide. So, you know, hopefully to avoid situations like this, if we just cycle through these next slides. So recent $4 million build, you know, lacks parking, water fountains, toilets, amazing skate park, but the lights don't work. Toilets at skate parks are inaccessible and locked. Water fountains broken, never repaired. And I've included this slide just because I know a bit of background story to this. Community, you know, participatory design, but the person who participated in this design wasn't a skateboarder, and upon reflection now as a grown man, is now concerned that they used his design just because he happened to be the most vocal person from his school. So this is Mount Druitt Skate Park. So I think that's my last slide, Indy. Oh, no, that's my last slide. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed that.
Briefly, thank you.
My name's Gavin. I'm a professional rollerblader for an independent skate manufacturing company called Them Skates. I make films, design products. Previously, I was working in a local skate shop called Word of Wheelcraft. They do blades, roller skates, scooters, and skateboards. I've skated my whole life, and it's taken me all over the place. All right.
So I can see that arrow there.
So first of all, I just want to acknowledge that I am a settler that is part of a collective displacement through the destruction of environment and society. I live on unceded lands of the Gadigal in the Eora Nation. pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and I pay respect to their enduring custodianship and extend that respect to any First Nations people here today. Oh, let me go back for a sec. Already spoken a little bit about myself. I guess like most people that get the skating bug, it's become a beautiful, rich lens through which I view the world and everything in it. I've also done a Master of Fine Art, and I've done some work painting public ground surfaces, working toward placemaking in community spaces, and occasionally on parts of public artworks. As one of the relatively few inline skaters, rollerbladers, I just thought I'd give a little brief history of rollerblading. And, put it more clearly into perspective and context with the other disciplines. Blading has largely been out of the public eye since the 90s, so I could imagine some of you may have a picture like this when you think of rollerblading. This is like a Nintendo game and a 90s movie, Mighty Ducks. But skating goes back a very, very long way. It was originally developed from ice skates, which is probably pretty easy to tell. But that has a very long history. These are bone skates. They're known as the oldest human-powered means of transport. And the oldest ice skates ever found were extracted from the bottom of a lake in Switzerland and carbon dated to 3000 BC. There's 3,500-year-old skates found in China using ox and horse bones, American and Canadian First Nations people. 200 AD is the earliest known skate to use a metal blade in Scandinavia. In the early 1700s, a man named Hans Brinker created summer ice skates, and the history goes on. And in 1819, there was the first patent for skates. That's on the top left there. And I think we've got some. It's 1863 was when roller skates, quad skates were first invented. And of course, it's the quad skates that were then deconstructed and attached to a board to create a skateboard. And as skateboarding developed through to vertical skating, some quad skaters also participated throughout that history. And when the rollerblade brand was born in 1988, people began to use them on ramps as well and in the streets. This is a pretty biased example of skates you'll find today. The ones on the left are kind of the adopted recreational skate that people started grinding rails with, and all on the right are where we're at today, which is very similar, pretty much the same, but the human foot hasn't changed much since the 80s. So just lost track of myself here. Like other wheeled disciplines, most bladers find themselves in the same areas as everyone else: skate parks, streets, plazas, ledge handrails, jersey barriers, you name it, DIYs. We play a very similar tune, but just use a different instrument. One of the different aspects about rollerblading is about the culture of it, and that is the fact that it was born from a financial boom. It was born out of a financial boom and had a bunch of money just poured into it in the early 90s. the first major extreme sports TV program was also born out of this money, the X Games. And for that reason, when it was in the limelight, there were 15-year-old kids on the world stage showcasing their newly discovered talents at the same time that skateboarding was receiving the same hard-earned exposure. And subsequently, a bit of a rivalry began, and with it came a swathe of smearing advertisements, with a particularly homophobic and sexist bent. And it worked pretty well. It was pretty successful. Blading went from the highest growing participation sport in the world at over 29 million participants, and a $650 million industry in 1994 to a $17 million industry in 2004. This is, on the left, we've got Dave Carney, who was instrumental in Big Brother skateboarding magazine. And he's also a kind of behind the scenes editor of a current roller skating magazine. And on the right, we have Angie Walton, who was founder of the longest standing rollerblading magazine and original member of Team Rollerblade, which was a dance crew that evolved into ramp skating. Nevertheless, like all these cultures, it grew and refined naturally with time. Although being another adolescent male-dominated culture, it too had some issues to deal with. And I always wonder if it was to do with the taunts and slurs that we got through the 90s that sort of birthed this era of just absolutely death-defying, near attempting to die type of skating, where people were just, doing absolutely crazy things, sliding down handrails off 3-story buildings, that type of things. Which, could be described as a type of hypermasculinity. But then, things have simmered down and evolved. These days, they're characterized by the change in people who go to these state spaces. I feel like the biggest change that's happened in skating and these spaces like skate parks is the amount of women and people other than cis men showing up. And this coincides with what Indigo's mentioned as an ethical turn in skateboarding, which correlates to a larger shift in our world and potentially in our youth. Women have been in skate parks like a way that they never have been before, specifically with regards to quad skating. They had their own instrument, and an already robust, resilient, and assertive community, some of which was formed through roller derby. They were in the same physical space at the same time and had a space that was their own. From what I've seen, female skateboarders joined with support and encouragement. And what it meant for us rollerbladers was that the other guys at the skate park didn't feel as comfortable acting in the ways that they once previously had towards us. Seems like everyone wants to get along a lot more these days. So we've kind of, had a side benefit here. I've written in my notes here that it's important to note that as a straight passing rollerblader, the experience of receiving homophobic remarks for rollerblading is something very different to receiving those marks for being who you are. At the end of the day, you can take your skates off. So this photo on the right is my brand, or the the brand I skate for, doing a collaboration with a skateboarding brand, and this is a double-page spread in Thrasher magazine, something I could never have imagined seeing. Yeah, and on the left we've got Katie on the New York Times. For me personally, this is where it started, in my living room. I remember the feeling on the carpet. I was scanning the ground with my feet. I gained a visceral sense of the ground textures in my home in a way that was novel and different to walking. It was heightened and I wanted more. This is my 8th birthday, getting a pair of rollerblades there. And I think there was something special about it because I think it was the first time I ever wanted something that was not what my brother wanted. So I think there was a sense of agency building here. From there it was on, I just skating all over the place, getting a public transport card, running through the city, jumping online, talking on message boards, meeting people from interstate, jumping on a bus, going to stay at their parents' house. Yeah, it gave me a reprieve from life at home as well. It was a way to escape travel, a way to challenge myself physically through adolescence, to develop calm and focus in the face of fear, persistence and resilience, and a way to viscerally know that I'm here and to show myself the agency that I have. And eventually it took me around the world and continues to do that. So I just started saving up and traveling to competitions and making skating videos. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same for all the cultures, but rollerblading being so small, you literally can just jump online, say, hey, I'm a rollerblader, I'm in this city, and you're guaranteed to have a floor or a couch anywhere. So it really helps with regards to travel and that type of thing. These are some trips that I've been on in Myanmar. This is a film we did with someone from London and France, basically skating around, meeting the local skaters, and just getting to see different perspectives. And this is in Jakarta. I just got back from another year of that last week. And all across Europe with some competitions, and just social events really. Okay. I do have some slides here that are related to the work I was doing in my Masters of Fine Art, which was trying to find some sort of view of skating in an art lens, I guess. Just tracing lines and movement and that type of thing, and that's where I started to take a closer look in the sort of interface between the built environment and public artworks and the act of skating. That was where some of the work resulted, particularly looking at things like hostile architecture and just like physical languages that help us navigate through spaces. And this is kind of, I guess, where it was sort of already happening. These are just a few slides of people skating on public artworks. Over the years, it's something that happens quite often. And I find it a particularly interesting, sort of expressive, has a lot of potential. You know, this photo on the right is particularly loaded to me and quite interesting. And definitely not how the sculpture was, intended to be used. Just a little brief note on skating and public art. Skatable public art, to me, would introduce a different kind of play than what currently exists. So if you're talking about spaces that can be created that aren't your typical skate park on the edge of an oval in the outskirts of town, they're different from skate parks, different from street skating, from DIYs. They're different from competitions and demo skating, and just different from what we've seen previously. Running through my notes here, I think it's a really exciting expansion of skating as a whole, and an expansion of street skating in particular. The idea of skatable public artworks is one that has the permission to be used, and one that's sort of enmeshed into the fabric of the urban environment and landscape. It will be a change in the landscape of street skating, one that celebrates this intersection of cultures, one that invites something new, and it's a two-way and open dialogue with public art within the urban environment. What does it mean to go and skate a piece of art that was made with the intention of being skated? An open invitation to engage with movement and meaning. To me, it's creating a sense of a kind of a living artwork, and it operates in many ways at once. I think it has the power to recontextualize these cultures in the mind of the broader public, and it also can liberate public artworks in a sense, as it invites you to not only engage with it physically, but to create artistic expression yourself. I think it would be very exciting. And that's probably enough from me. Thank you.
So thank you so much for that, Gav. And of course, we're really, really honored to have Dan's work and Gav's work in this conversation. It's quite rare to get conversations around skateboarding, inline skating, and next we have something about quad skating. I hope I've got that terminology right with our next speaker. It's interdisciplinary in an academic sense. It's interdisciplinary in the practice on wheels as well. So Anya, if you're okay to set up, we'll throw over to you. So thank you so much.
So my name is Anastasija. I'm also known as Tov in the skate community. I am a graduate of architecture and practicing in the industry. And I am a semi-professional quad skater. Okay, good evening, everybody. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, or on which I'm presenting today. I'd like to acknowledge the Jagera people and the Turrbal people as the traditional custodians of Meanjin, Brisbane, and pay respects to elders past, present, emerging. My name is Anastasija Kukić, and as I said earlier, I'm better known as Tov in the skate community. I am a postgraduate architecture student, and I'm practicing architectural designer. I am also a semi-professional and sponsored roller skater and advocate for underappreciated architecture and ways of space making. This has led me into a deep fascination and investigation into the positive impacts of skating on architectural thinking in urban spaces, or as I like to colloquially call it, the study of skate-tecture. Skating has been, and to this day, still seen as an alternative act. I acknowledge in the social zeitgeist we skaters have a light shone on us, from the popularity of the Tony Hawk Pro Skater video games to the inclusion of skating as a sport in the Olympics. However, I argue skating will continue to present itself as a transgressive behavior, not due to the behavior or actions of skaters, but due to the nature and precedent of how we design cities and who we design for. The current model of city making is conducted through a liberal hegemonic market. City designers seek the most streamlined approaches, environments meticulously zoned of do's and do nots. The individualized presentation of property and objects. Landscapes pristine and changeless, a moot argument to preserving the past and asking the future or change to cease. David Harvey discussed the inseparable nature of humans and the environment, the city, in which we have both made and are condemned to live in. If this is so, then the city cannot be divorced from the people we want to be. Therefore, it is justified that we, humans, will also inherently desire to change the city, to make it fit our needs and wants. According to Harvey, the city from a world that invests solely on rights of property to that which prioritizes collective rights and power would break away from the liberal homogeny. This can be ensured by an activity or activities which bargains our collective power and changes our cities for the roles and activities we desire. This is an act which skaters have been doing for well over half a century. A sport and subculture inherently dismantles the liberal designs of hegemony. I forgot to, there we go. While skating, skaters inherently become space makers. Every obstacle we touch with our wheels, to the rails we grind, to the ledges we destroy, broadens the scope of the original spaces and objects' intent, and reinvigorates spaces with our social presence. The ability to interpret spaces in not a unique phenomenon is not a unique phenomenon, though the active drive to seek new experiences from any space is uniquely felt by skaters. In the words of Alexis Sablone, skaters have cared more about the urban landscape than most people ever imagine. We are the champions of overlooked architecture and architectural objects. The most significant spaces in our cities we view above all other urban design is to us is a new moment to claim and re-emulate. However, I postulate that skaters have a unique internal philosophy. A spot can be owned or claimed for a moment in time. We can claim the space only whilst we skate the space. The moment we are no longer skating is the moment that the space is no longer a skate space or a space that we can claim. It is similar to other core philosophies of skaters, to let go and enjoy it for what it is in the moment, from concepts of never done before tricks that disallow revisiting spots whilst performing the same tricks, to the finality of boards, skates, surfaces, and even our bodies. We know we cannot go back and hold any of those moments. They are only positive memories of the past. The spaces we create are therefore ephemeral and temporal. Our skate spaces cannot be tangibly held onto or even enforced to last forever. Skaters can only hold space for as long as they can physically skate that said space. It is why spaces with skaters, such as skate parks, or locations such as the Macba in Barcelona are ideal social hubs. They allow for a flurry of different activities to overlap as spaces are shared in between brief explosive events. Thus, skating can only be relived by actively skating the space, or via other methods such as film and photography. But they are only secondary to the official event of being present for a skate trick. Thus, a dimension shifts. The space we once skated becomes anew. The space is no longer tangibly the exact same spot. This may be due to a new obstacle. The space may need a clean. It may be busier. It may be a different time of day or year, where the sun shines on the space in a different way, or the wind blows in the opposite direction. All these cause minute new variations to the original space that a skater experiences. On the other hand, film and photography have the ability to retell the experience and activity of a space, but it can only be told through the lens of one person. It is not a possibility for skaters, I feel. We collectively recognize this as a subconscious level, that we can claim the space and then we must let it physically go for the cycle to complete and for the space to regenerate, allowing for our new perspectives on body movement and space reinterpretation to continue and progress skating and skaters. Our desire to perform our tricks as many times as possible can drive us to constantly seek the spaces to perform the tricks in. However, as mentioned before, we cannot hold these spaces. So what is there for skaters to do? We continue to reinterpret the spaces we skate. We continue to make those spaces as skatable as possible. Sometimes that is a destructive method, other times it is a neutral action, and other times it is creative activity. Skating has had a history of repurposing spaces that have become obsolete to the regular citizens' gaze, whether that be jumping fences and skating drained pools due to weather restrictions, or finding dried out service infrastructure to host skate events, or a public plaza's ledge in the middle of the busiest business district that nobody is using over the weekend. We shift the paradigm of our city spaces as prescribed to be used. We break the homogeny. We are the active citizens, shaping our cities into the spaces we want to see and tread. We not only want to inhabit it, we desire to live in them. This desire goes beyond the metaphysical reinterpretations of architecture. Our community is actively building with their hands real spaces for us to skate. The culture of do-it-yourself skating, or DIY, is a steadfast of our community. In every city, if there is a skater, there is a skate space physically built by them. These DIY parks were born out of the necessity of either to make space due to lack of private or public infrastructure, or due to the heavy policing and thus social ostracization of skaters have faced in the past. Our community's ingenuity, commitment, and creativity should be celebrated, and a lot of these spaces we create should be preserved. We can help find ways to financially support and decriminalize the act of skate space creation. Skaters already voluntarily preserve skate spaces by setting up fundraisers for materials and sharing their spare time to perform laborious tasks to keep both skate parks and DIY skate parks functioning. We purposefully reclaim city spaces. Skate parks are typically given maintenance and facelifts first by skaters, and then eventually by councils. Most of the time, these improvements are accepted by council, and authorities will turn a blind eye to patchwork such as filling in cracks, rewielding a broken rail, or grinding back an edge that is too sharp. These interventions are seen as net positives by councils, but not due to it being a kind gesture of moral active citizens. Rather, it is seen as a positive safety issue from a legal and liability stance. This, however, is a double standard of councils. How can councils be sure that the bondo job or the welded rail that are fixed are any better, safer, or legal fit than the addition of a new rail or a ramp extension done by the community? This double standard is an unfair assessment of the community's hard work and usually high expertise of the individuals participating in a creative and active outlet. I propose that councils need to look into the facilitation and allowing skaters greater autonomy in our spaces. Starting and developing a dialogue with your local skaters and park would improve the longevity of the skate parks, as the burden of upkeep and maintenance is shared, and it will allow the park to grow with the needs and desires of the community. Outside the park, and especially for suburbs which lack skate parks, the necessity to destigmatize skating is so crucial to allowing people accessibility spaces of unstructured play and community. Creating spaces in central locals and accessible hubs to town centers that include skatable objects that also blend into the social fabric as multifunctional pieces of street furniture, planting, and art are simple interventions to allowing skaters spaces to learn, exercise, and create social bonds that can positively impact and activate previously inactive spaces. Plus, these small interventions are a positive way of building skate spaces whilst reducing costs, emissions, resources, maintenance, management, and waste, as it can serve several purposes at the same time in small scales. Thank you all for allowing me to present today. And I'd also just like to give a big thank you to the following people: Indigo, Ubi, Darren, Rob, Stabs, and Brent. Thank you.
Give me the applause. So thank you so much, Tov, and thank you so much for all those talks. And this will also be recorded. So Roger and Penny from the Australian Sociological Association will be able to, in a couple of days, put this on YouTube so that you can share it with various communities. And they're really strong messages, not just for the Board of Sociology and Research, but also for Council, for the public, in demystifying and destigmatizing skateboarding, and also just letting us look at things with a very different viewpoint and revealing so much, such as in Dan's work with those visual codes that you had. A much more socially meaningful space than the graffiti would be possibly seen by councils. I'm going to, we have just a little bit of time for maybe one question each. If people wanted to ask a question, please do that. So Alicia was just thanking everybody for the talk. Alicia was one of the presenters last year and commented that they're really important talks and that she loved hearing everyone's perspectives. So if there are any questions from the audience here, well, I'll give people a chance to think about their, if there's any questions for this session. I might ask a question. This is my prerogative as the chair, and that is, what is one of the things that you've done that has seen, that you feel has actually made an actionable change? Like, the part of the work that we do obviously is theoretical, or it's in sort of like an artistic space, but what's, I guess, one of the pieces of work that you've done that you think, okay, like everybody else can also benefit from that, whether they're skaters or non-skaters or everybody? So Dan, with your work in particular, with the big skate park study that you're doing in Western Sydney, or the work that you've done previously, what's something that you can see happening in the community from that?
Well, it's really great to be part of the legislative review in ACT, and have the opportunity to, I guess, present some of my key research outcomes from my doctorate as evidence for the benefit of skateboarding being approached in a planning sense through a cultural and urban landscape rather than sporting. And some of the recommendations that came out of that process really, you know, I never dreamt that my research would have had that kind of impact. So, you know, seeing a legislative recommendation towards having to you know, to allowing skateboarders to populate urban spaces, like civic areas, to, you know, add life to those spaces. The requirement for planners to have to justify the use of using hostile architecture such as skate stoppers. The consideration for accessibility for skate parks, and you know, how well, I guess, accessible they were for young people, especially from, you know, modes of transport and things like that. So one of the reasons why I've moved on to this Western Sydney skate park survey is because, you know, that was all ACT based, which you know, my first research did incorporate some skate spaces from the ACT, but it made me think that, you know, Western Sydney and the 9 different council areas that I'm working with could really benefit from those kinds of conversations at the very least. And it's also been nice to be actively involved in conversations with local councils about developing skate park strategies, which I don't think any of them currently have. Just for them to be considering those kinds of strategic approaches rather than it being as ad hoc as it has been for the last 40 years. So I think that's been a really good outcome.
It's really, really encouraging to see the councils doing that and reaching out. And in the UK, Skateboarding Great Britain, which is our equivalent of the national sporting organisation of Skate Australia here, they have commissioned a study of all skate parks, an audit of all skate parks in Great Britain, which
Wow.
Dr. Esther Sayers is doing that one. And I got to do some of the field work, and I've got to say the skate parks are very much like what you say, where the populations that use them are here, and then there's the last priority. You wouldn't even expect that anybody could access that at all. So it was really nice to see those aerial shots. I'm going to throw a question, that same question to you, Tov, if you're okay to answer that. And thank you, Dan.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that question. I might also answer Alicia's at the same time because they do sort of overlap in my field, where I feel that like one of the main big things that we could be doing better is just recognizing that like objects in general aren't going to last forever, and having a expiry date is never a bad idea, and it does always help reinvigorate spaces. And I feel that skating does inherently provoke that, and like that's from stuff like benches to street art and everything. Like it can't last outdoors forever. And in saying that, like we can also look at probably like enshrining in our building standard codes and whatnot is just having a bit of that realization that these objects which aren't permanent and cannot be permanent should not be treated as permanent. And therefore I think that is probably the best way to go about it. From an architectural background. Yeah.
Thank you, Tov. And I was really interested. I love the connection you made between David Harvey and skateboarding. I don't think a lot of these theorists would have ever, sort of looked at them in the context, or maybe they have in the past, thought about cultures in their relationship to space.
Sorry, can you repeat that? Just cut out.
That's right. I was just I'm just admiring and fanning out at David Harvey's work and how it is interwoven with your observations around skateboarding. And just a very quick question here from Harry Meadley. He's also asking, before we get to you, Gav, Harry Meadley has also asked, I would like to ask what the speakers feel are the main barriers to achieving the positives. They're all well evidenced that better integrating skating into spaces and skate parks would bring to a wider society. So just have a think about those sort of main barriers, and we just might move to Gav on what sort of, I guess, actionable changes from that public art perspective and in your in line skating as well, how that's sort of made a change socially, because it's a sociology panel. I'm just interested in asking social questions, but it can be policy and other things as well.
What's the question again? Sorry.
So how has the work that you've done, maybe with your art and with your master's thesis and just the community work that you're doing, made a social impact?
One thing that comes to mind is more rollerblading specific, but being a part of a group that created the first independent skating company, I could see that it's made a shift in our community in an era where there hasn't been really essential organization capacity, where one tangible result was we raised the royalty rates by 10 times the industry standard, and it only took less than 6 months for the entire rest of the industry to follow suit. after 30 years of begging these companies to raise their prices. So it really showed a community the power of what happens when you do things yourself and organize.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, I'm just not back in the screen from other books. So thank you for that, Gav, Dan, and Tov. So just the last question before we go, because we're just a little bit over time, is what's a key barrier that you have faced in your work that results in some sort of, I guess, sociological challenge as well for people that are going to watch this from the world of social sciences. So let's start with you, Tov, if you're available, and just
Yes, I'm available. I just got kicked out of my office though, so bear with me. Well, it might be a little noisy outside. So I think one of the biggest factors has always been being taken serious. In this field of study, architecture very much likes to think, architecture and just the building world likes to take itself very seriously and doesn't see skating as a serious activity. And I think that the work that we're doing here and the work that that Indy is always perpetuating and pushing forwards helps that integrity of our research, of our discussions, of our community, and of our value and importance. So yeah, that's always been my biggest factor is when I try and talk to people about these types of things. They think it's novel, whilst it's actually quite important.
Thank you. And let's hear from you, Gav. What's something that's a barrier for your community and your work? And thank you for that, Tov.
A barrier?
Yeah.
Maybe channels of discussion. I think there's, in this sort of day and age, there's many disparate conversations happening, and forums where people can come together and organize and share ideas, things like this, are really helpful with regards to developing common, sort of identifying common interests and goals and that type of thing.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really great observation as well. Thank you, Gav. And lastly, Dan, what's a barrier that you have faced? And I'm sort of posing it as both a provocation and something that I guess the sociological researchers that will be watching this as well can take.
Yeah, I think similar to what Tov and Gav had said, being taken seriously, both from a sort of research institution, but also at local government level. I am finding it difficult to get people to commit to having conversations and, engaging with the project. And just in some research that I was doing today, I was quite surprised. Perhaps I shouldn't be surprised, but I was surprised that in the last Australian Bureau of Statistics, skateboarding was a kind of aggregate, as many people skated as they claimed to participate in any other sport. So all of the other sports, when added together, equal skateboarding. So I think it's about 56% of males say they skateboard, and the sum total of all other sports come to about 56%. So that's football, basketball, soccer, swimming, everything. And in this case, they bundle inline skating, roller skating, scootering, and skateboarding in together. So there's no differentiation. But, I think if people appreciated how many young kids, especially, cite skating and other wheeled activities as being very important to them, then perhaps it would be taken more seriously as a, not only a leisure activity, but also a cultural pursuit. And, therefore, commitment to investment and improvement and development and support could be an easier process.
Thank you. So really, it's been really valuable to hear all these different perspectives about what social impact and social engagement and tangible results the research of everybody here has done in their studies in architecture and fine arts, and Dan, in your discipline. Dan, what is your discipline?
Mine? I came into my career as a photographer, and I use photography as a research tool. And I'm well, I'm still a photographer, but
I want to claim you as a cultural sociologist. I'm sure.
yeah, I'm
Thank you.
open to your advice.
And so, yes, these conversations can continue. There's the SHRED talks, so that stands for skateboarding, sustainability, health research, and environmental design, that Dr. Ben Duster and myself run monthly talks. I'm also part of the sport and leisure thematic group with the Sociological Association of Australia, with colleagues including Paul Bell, Richard Pringle, and Emma as well. So do reach out through TASA if you want to find out further talks on that, including there's an upcoming one for the sociology of youth for Social Science Week, and also one for the thematic group on urbanism with the sociology talks. And this talk will be recorded. So please share with any of your colleagues that are interested in this area. And it also helps with our advocacy, and it definitely helps firm up the discipline, the broader discipline of skateboarding studies and skate studies. So I really appreciate the speakers sharing their wonderful research and insights and experiences in the various disciplines that they are from, including their skate disciplines. And thank you so much to the Sociological Association to host this, and to Penny and to Roger, of course, who are also behind the scenes on this one. So thank you, everybody.